and
Right.
healing one another through our stories and just sharing, that did something. I
Very
believe that
powerful.
ignited us to be even aware of, our sisters, not just a part of this book project, but just as a whole, to be aware of, what their process looks like. And everybody has work to do, and your workload looks different than the next, and it's okay. But having that circle of women that you're not alone, it does something to you. It ignites you to even put your feet to the pavement and really truly do the work to be free.
Yes.
Freedom is our birthright.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Together, My Battle Scars Now Sing Melodies of Victory, Volume 1. And these are the stories of women survivors of domestic violence and breast cancer. So thank you. And if we can kind of just see who we have at the table with us. We have Miss Tocarra Nicole, we have Janet Mack, we have Desiree, Deidre Washington, as well as Elaine. So thank you for sharing this space with me. And
So I'm Tocarra Nicole. I have a publishing company, an apparel line, and also I'm a life coach. I call myself the identity architect and coach, as I literally work with millennial and Generation X women to help them to discover their identity by using positive energy, sensitivity, and discernment. And so with this book project, um, this was an idea that literally came like at 3 o'clock in the morning. God tends to, that's my time, between anywhere between 2:50ish and no later than 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm up and we've had a conversation, or he's on praying, or downloads come. And with this book project, I literally got waken up out of my sleep with it. I have a maybe not the best habit of sleeping with my phone in my bed. I used to manage student housing developments back in my day and lived on property. So it became a habit for me to sleep with my phone in my bed, because you never know what's going to happen, a fire or whatever. And so that mindset is still with me. I get fussed about it from time to time from my significant other, because notifications go off. People like to email you at 3 o'clock in the morning and all that good stuff. But anyways, um, this morning that I had this idea, it was perfect because I literally put it in my phone, and I was kind of puzzled about it at first, being very honest. I said, my battle scars sing melodies of victory. I said, okay, God, what do you want me to do with this? And he said, this is a book project. I said, okay, God, for who? And he said, it's going to be in different volumes. I said, okay, where do I start? And so here we are with women who survived domestic violence and breast cancer. The idea was originally to get the book out in the month of October, as we honor and celebrate those women who are indeed survivors of breast cancer and domestic violence. However, God took it a different way. And so just thankful that I did not lose momentum when God took it a different way. There is an amazing saying out there that if you really want to laugh super hard, I'm probably over exaggerating, um, think that your plans are going to work over the plans of God, right? And so I did a call. I did a call for action. I posted on my Facebook page, women who were willing to share their stories about domestic violence and breast cancer. And at first, it was a large number of women who came to the table with just domestic violence. And it blew my mind because If I was to go back on my Facebook page, I had so many women chiming in for days, no joke. Hey, me. I would love to share. This is what happened to me. And there were some days where I literally cried because I said, you know what? This is something that happens more than we talk about. Um, we're aware of domestic violence, but a lot of times we don't. That's it. We're just aware and we move on. We really don't take the time to get to know people who've actually gone through it, and what that looks like from their eyes in reference to their mindset. Just all of that comes with being in a domestic violence relationship. And so I found these women, and to this day, Deidre and I don't know how we connected on Facebook. We sat and tried to figure it out. We were just like, oh, praise Jesus. Um, I don't know how I connected with Janet either. I don't remember where that came from. However, I am very mindful and very present in the fact that there's no mistakes. God does not make any mistakes at all whatsoever. And so I'm so elated to be able to have worked with these women and continue to work with these women. We have more work to do together, as a sisterhood, to be able to really come together and help other women and men understand domestic violence, because a lot of times when we talk about domestic violence, we talk about it from the woman's perspective. However, I truly believe the more and more that we share, we're going to be able to change the minds of some of these men and not understanding when they put their hands on a woman, what does that mean? And even when some women put their hands on a man, what does that look like? There's a lot of men out here who are silently suffering because they have to, because they're big and they're bold and they're strong and they've gone through these things, but I'm a man. How can I tell the world or even my friend, my neighbor, or my colleague, whomever, that I'm in a domestic violence situation and I'm letting this woman beat on me? I'm letting this woman talk crazy to me. So all these other things, because when we think about domestic violence, we automatically think physical. It's bigger than physical. A lot of it has to do with mental, psychological. The words stick with us more than anything. So thinking about your battle scars, taking them and shift them into melodies of victory simply means that we're here to literally tell people our stories and allowing our melodies be the voices that we have to empower other people.
Right. My name is Janet Mack. I'm an evangelist, among many other things, a mother. My profession is as a mental health counselor and domestic violence case manager. I deal directly with the court systems. I deal directly with the victims who are coming straight out of their battered situations, now in counseling or now in my shelter, seeking support and help. So when they come to me, in my office, I do a lot of one-on-one counseling. And I just recently completed, in December of last year, my domestic violence advocate certificate here in the state of New Jersey. And I had the pleasure of meeting some very strong men. And I'd like to introduce those who have been victims of domestic violence as strong men for one reason. We know physically their brute strength can overpower a woman. But many of men whom I've interviewed and talked with, from a domestic violence support standpoint, they have shared with me they choose not to hit a woman. Part of it is their upbringing. Many of them were very close to their mothers, and their mothers taught them never to hit a woman. Many of them have values that they believed and standards that they know that they can overpower the woman. However, they have children. This one particular man I met him at the library, interesting enough, and we were just talking, and he was actually he had just got out the hospital where this woman had grabbed him by the throat. And ladies, we like to wear our coffin nails, right? So in his resistance to hit her, as he shared with me, he was raised not to hit a woman. And she was very aggressive, very verbal in his face, and just grabbed him by the neck. And when she started choking him, her nails punctured his throat, and he blacked out. So when we recognized men, and then the end of that story was, she called the police and made up this, because she thought she had killed him because he had blacked out. She made up a story to the police that, there was a domestic violence situation, and she reacted, and she doesn't know what's going on with her husband, right? Police gets there, they assess the situation, he says, and she's told this story. He's in the back of the room. He's come to himself now, and he's in the back of the room, and the police comes and grab him and arrest him. I'm getting ready to arrest him. And he's like, what's going on? What's happening? Why are you here? But he explains the story, and he goes, no, that's not true. And he goes back and forth. So the police actually examined her fingernails and saw the tissue and blood under her nails. Mm-hmm. And he said, I would never hit a woman. I was raised not to hit a woman. And I did not hit my wife. And they had a one-month-old baby. And so the police actually took both of them down, but she was arrested and pressed charges. And he refused to press charges against her because he was the mother. He told me that she was the mother of his child, and that he knew the importance of a child having its mother to raise them. And he was willing to, separate from her if this is what she wanted, so that she could still be with her child. But because of the police examining him, they were able to take the case in their own hands because they had evidence. And this is what we want to help educate and empower and let people know, that now the new laws on the books and the new methods in which the police department are being trained now on domestic violence, it doesn't matter who's the batterer anymore. It's a level playing field. And the laws on the books go such as that. Whoever is the aggressor is the one who will receive the punishment, if you will. So I work firsthand in the court systems with the victims when they go to court. And, sometimes as an advocate, they need someone to talk to. They need someone that they can debrief with, that they can pull themselves together before they go before the judge to make their decree as far as what they want or what they would like to see happen. And so I began to hear many stories like that as I traveled and went to different areas. I was at the courthouse, and I was in court with a client, and the other gentleman that was there pleading his case was the same thing. And the lady took his children and fled to North Carolina. So the aggressor, it doesn't matter. It's the same emotional and psychological effects as Tocarra expressed earlier on the victim. And so just to help shed some light in that area, as far as what she was speaking on, what is our experiences with those who are male victims. And these are some of the things that I've experienced and ran across since I've been working as an advocate. My own personal story, I'm a preacher's kid, and I was raised in a Christian home. And my parents had domestic violence in their home, but they kept it secret. And many times, as leaders in the church and pastors, you don't want to disclose that there is battery and domestic violence going on. And it extends further than just a physical hit. It's in verbal. And the verbal, sometimes it makes a statement stronger than just a physical hit. You can get over a bruise, the pain that you hit, and I can get over the pain. But the verbal, it sticks with you. It plays in your background, in your subconscious.
Saw domestic abuse between my mother and my father, who were young, 15 and 17 when I was born, who were not married, but in their adolescence, they are now looking at having a family and not being developed into adulthood and all of that. So that came with its own set of issues. And as young as I was, when my mom decided to leave and stop dealing with my father because of his immaturity, I still remember that. And that was, 3, 4, 5. And so as a parent, I think the incident specifically was, is I was dating a gentleman, and we had a really bad night. I believe this is in the book. I can't really remember, but I do believe so. And the craziest thing was he allowed me to stop fighting, to pack my children up and take them to my grandfather's house. And then I had to come back and finish the fight. And I did. And so that opened up a whole bunch of questions as to, I took my children to safety, but then I came back for a man who wasn't my children's father, for a man that I really didn't have any ties to, for a relationship that was as good as it was going to get. And I still felt like I needed to finish something. And I think talking to a lot of other people who have dealt with domestic violence, that feeling is a real feeling. Like, we have to stay there. We have to figure it out. We have to stick it out. We have to, you don't have to do, you're not obligated to do any of those things. You are obligated to yourself. You are obligated to your health. You are obligated to your mental wellness. And sometimes that comes too late for a lot of us. And so I left because I left because I wanted to, one, grow old with my children. And I've seen and been busy with, or have known too many situations where people did not make it out. And other people had to raise their children and had to explain to them why they're not coming home. And something Elaine talked about last time, and I apologize if you don't want me to bring this up, but she said her husband passed, her abuser passed away. It hit me because during those times of being abused, I wished that something would happen to my husband. I wish that something would happen to that person who was coming down on me. And in reality, after hearing that story, no, I would have never wished that on my worst enemy. But in that moment, in that time, those are thoughts that come through you. And to actually hear that had happened, that somebody had went through that was an experience, that it was real, and that it wasn't just a thought. And so many instances where it could have happened, and divinity stepped in and the universe stepped in and removed that. There's a reason for that. So yeah, making sure my children were safe, making sure that I was able to see them grow up, and that they walked away not as broken as I was.
Just to kind of piggyback on what Deidre was saying, is interesting. I shared with Tocarra earlier that today is a bit bittersweet for me because let me put it like, I have 5 children, 4 of my own, and growing up dealing with domestic violence that I experienced from in the home with my parents, it turned me into this mother that loves her children so fiercely that I was determined I was not going to be the mother to my children that my mother had been to me. What's interesting is that even though my mother physically abused me and emotionally and verbally abused me, I loved her so fiercely. And today is a bit bittersweet for me because today marks 6 years that my mother has passed away. So today I struggle because there's that part of that little girl that still hurts. And then there's that part of the little girl that loves her mother so fiercely that regardless of anything that she had ever done to me, I still love my mother. But I love my children. I give my children everything that my mother didn't give me. My mother wasn't the hugging type of person. She wasn't the I love you. She wasn't the you go get them, I got your back kind of person. So I missed all of that. And it's interesting, people, how do they say it? People will forget all of the wonderful things you've done for them and remember that one thing that you didn't do for them. So I think in this scenario, sometimes I have to remind myself all of the good things that my mother did do for me, because if I don't, it will be so overshadowed by the things that she said and the things that she did. Even today, I found myself contemplating, my mother used to tell me, I'll never love you the way that I love your brother. And on her dying bed, I was the one that sat there and held her hand. And as I reflected on that today, I was saying, why in a way I was talking to her today. I was like, look at me. Today I was presenting this little girl to her, and she's dead and gone, but here I am, 48 years old, presenting this little girl to her saying, hey, look at me. Look at me. Be proud of me. Be happy for me. Like me. Love me. And so I found that because of all the things that she did, now I am that mother to my children, that I never miss an opportunity to say, you know what, I think you're awesome. I think you're great. I am so proud of you. I have a son now, sometimes I don't even know where he's laying his head. But instead of focusing on that with him, when I talk to him, I tell him, I am so proud of you. Because in as much as you are not doing the things that maybe I want you to do, you're not doing the things that you could be doing. He's not in jail. He's not on drugs. He's not got, he's not some of these things that he could be. So I find that I am just that mother that I probably am a helicopter mom if I could be, but they're grown and gone, so I can't be. But I am that number one cheerleader for them. I am that everlasting hug. My daughter was in a really, really bad car accident on Monday, and I have been back and forth to North Carolina with her. And so yesterday, I'm sorry, y'all. Yesterday when I went down there to see her and to pick up my grandson, she laid on me. And she said, Mommy, I'm so glad you're here. That's what abuse did for me. That's what that hurt did for me, because never will my children ever be able to stand flat-footed and say and tell the truth that my mama wasn't there, because birth of children, the whole nine, I have been there. I have been their number one supporter. So I took all of that pain, all of that I wasn't getting, and I wanted to make sure that my children would never have to say, or never have to wonder, never have to question if I really loved them, if I really cared about them. And maybe I overcompensated in some ways. I'm sure I have. And it probably has been a sort of a negative for them. But at the same time, I felt like I would rather have overcompensated, ask for forgiveness later, than not do anything and not show that, and try to and have to stand there for my children to grow up, because children grow up and they want to know. They want to know why. So that's my story. And I did want to piggyback on what Janet was saying earlier. Men do get the short end of the stick sometimes, because when I was married to my husband, my mother and I got into a heated discussion over my daughter, who was a baby, and my mother picked up a butcher knife off the stove and she cut me between my eyes. got in my car and I left. I went back to New York with my husband. And I went to the hospital. And do you know they wanted to arrest him because they thought that he had beat me? Now, mind you, I had been beat before, don't get me wrong, but this particular case, they automatically assumed that he had been the one to beat me. And it took an act of Congress for me to show them, papers. I had to show them stuff that had been going on for them to say, okay, maybe this, maybe she's telling the truth. But, for men to say that I'm being abused, or for men to have to try to prove themselves, sometimes it is very, very difficult, because society does not see men as being abused, and they don't see mothers doing some of the things that they do to their children. So
didn't see the abuse, because when they would go in behind closed doors back in the day, what was happening in behind closed doors stayed behind closed doors. So as a teenager growing up, and then my first experience at 18 or 17 when I first met the abuser, and then once the abuse began and years went by, I'm now 18, 19, still a teenager, still very young. By the time I got to have my daughter, I really didn't know how to communicate domestic violence to her, because I didn't see it. So my thing was to cover her. My way of protecting her was not to let her know that I had went through these horrific experiences. And so I never spoke to her about it until once I was in a relationship with her dad, and he was becoming very verbal. He was more verbal than physical, but as she grew up and became 2 and 3 and 4 and started hearing him speak to me in a way she didn't understand, and so she would always think, Mommy, why is Daddy so angry? Why does he doesn't like us? And so she took that on as her own. How can I say it? She borrowed that experience and felt that it was something she did, why Daddy wasn't happy with us, why he would yell at me, and he wasn't very coddling and very loving. He wasn't that type of father. And I would try wanting him to nurture her and give her that security blanket, and he refused. And I believe that was his way of punishing me. Many times he would say, it's because of you. It's because of you. And I couldn't figure it out. I couldn't understand, well, if it's me, what am I doing so I can correct that, so we can make it well, we can make it good for her. So my experience went a little different in being a parent. And then as she became an adult now, she reflects back on that, and she shares with me how she wished I could have been like Elaine. She wanted me to be more of that coddling and loving and everyday, and so, telling her how beautiful, I felt like she knew that, she knew I loved her, and I showed her in many ways, and I made provisions, because after her father left me to raise her alone, I was a first-time mom, and my parents are way up in age. I'm a baby boomer, so I didn't have anybody really to connect with on how to parent her, to be real honest. And so sometimes we struggle with what is healthy boundaries, what is healthy when you're raising your children and you've been abused, because psychologically, again, it goes back to that mindset of how we see ourselves, what we believe about ourselves. I felt very guilty because I couldn't fix his issue. I couldn't figure out what to make him happy. And then I'm having his child, and now I have to figure out how to care for her and take care of us and make sure we have a roof over our head. And I remember one day very vividly, we got into a big argument, big fight, because my thinking was preservation first. Let's keep a roof over our head, keep the lights on, blah, blah, blah. He wanted to go buy brand new tennis shoes, brand new sneakers, because he had gotten paid. And he wanted to have, himself looking fresh. And I said, when you have a child and you're in a relationship, that's irrelevant. The security blanket and the things that need to be taken. So the fight got on, and I called my girlfriend to come and get her, because I never wanted her to see us become physical with each other. And when he grabbed me in front of her, I was petrified, because she had never seen that type of level of aggression. And thank God, my girlfriend came, and removed her from the environment. She was right down the street from me. And I told her, I never want to see her father aggressively handle me in the way he was in front of her. And because I never seen it. My parents went to the bedroom and they dealt with it. When they came out, it was a wrap. Whatever it was, And so now thinking about how I covered that, I was wrong. And she shared with me, here very recently in the last, about like 2 weeks ago, how she felt like I should have been more transparent, younger, not wait till she was older and then try to explain. And now she has challenges with dealing with her dad, and now she has challenges with me. So it can bring on a battle within the children. How do they see themselves in that relationship? Many times they take on the perspective that it's about them, that they did something wrong, that they were the cause of these crises that's in the home. And so
Right. So with me and my situation, my older 3 kids, it was their father that was the one that was abusive to me. They were very young at the time. I think the oldest was not even 4 yet. He's about 4, yeah, because my daughter was 2, and then the youngest one was under a year old. And I started to see the abuse lead to them. Like when he was angry at me or after we've had a fight, he would kind of talk to the children very, mean, thoroughly, would just not take care of them like, the proper way. And it just led up to a point where I'm like, if this man is doing this to me and he's gonna hurt my children, I have to leave. Because I'm like, it's more than enough for me to handle the abuse, but to abuse my children as well, that was absolutely like, no. And I didn't want it to affect my children as well, because when they're around domestic violence and they see the anger and aggression, I have 2 boys, they would become abusers. I have a daughter, and she would have possibly been in a relationship where she accepts certain things because this is what she sees her dad doing to mom, her dad is doing it to her, so it's acceptable. And I didn't come from a family of domestic violence. So I was like, this is just, it had to end. They were young, they really didn't understand, they didn't know why, mommy moved away from daddy. But as they got older, I would say like middle age, I spoke about it. I let them know, like, this is the reason, why I left. I've always taught my boys to be respectful of women, but don't let anybody know, don't let any woman, girl, female, put their hands on you. Like, that's not acceptable. Even in school growing up, my boys would encounter, some females, they want to hit and tap. And I would tell my boys, like, tell the teacher, speak on it. Don't be afraid to speak up, because it's not abuse, but it could lead to abuse. Because they think it's okay. Oh, it's funny. And it's not at all. And with my daughter, I just always, tell her to be self-confident and just walk in who she was. Just don't accept the things that I accepted. Because that's not the way I wanted them to live at all.
So, Eulogia, I was young like you. My first marriage, I had been with my husband, dating him since I was 16. We grew up in the church together, had known each other since we were 3. And honestly, we liked each other, and yeah, we courted, but our marriage was basically already fused between our grandparents and our parents. And so his dad was a deacon, finally ended up becoming a preacher, and his mother was a deaconess. Really wild, for the simple fact that I grew up in a Baptist church. Our church was really close-knit. And there were a lot of things that I learned growing up that had, there were so many secrets. His father had children out of wedlock and had continued to have children out of wedlock. And so the in-law talks that were given to me were more like, oh, it's just a bad day. Marriages defy logic. You're a strong woman, just bring the kids over. Maybe you guys need a break, little things like that. When physical things would happen in their presence, which was far and in between, because I guess it was more of a respect factor. Again, it would be coded over. I will say that there was a lady that, God rest her soul, Mother Whitley, who a week before she a couple of days before she passed, had requested that we come bring her communion. And when we arrived, we were standing side by side in the front of her door, and she invited us in, and she brought us to her parlor, and she took me to the kitchen, asked me to help bring snacks back. And when she got me back there, one of the first things she said to me is, she said, honey, I don't care how much you love someone. If you are forcing a situation, it is not for you. And she told me that my first year. Now, I stayed with my husband 10 years. This lady, we were new to the board. This was maybe our third time going out for the sick and shut in. But this woman had been instrumental our whole lives. And, after that talk, we came back. She allowed us to give her communion. We sat and we talked for a moment, and we got up to leave, and she hugged me and she held on to me tight. And she said, you do whatever it is you need to do. And this woman had been married 50, 60 years. I mean, marriages don't last like that anymore, women were taught to endure a lot in previous generations. And it was because, those marriages got them out of their parents' houses, or got them out of the South, or got them out of whatever, that home life was that they were trying to get away from, to come to the city, to whatever that is. Now, as modern women, we have so many things and opportunities that are waiting for us till we don't have to wait for somebody to bring us to something, to make something out of us. And I think that's instrumental too, it's a different time. And so now, if you're staying, my personal thoughts are, it is because you have devalued yourself because of that situation over time. And that the ways that are out, you just don't see, unfortunately. My own friends and family, I had one particular friend who I'd been friends with for 15, 17 years. And I think she kind of knew, but didn't really say anything. And I came in one time rushing to the bathroom to try and fix myself up. And she barged in, and she was like, wait a minute, first of all, you don't run through the house without saying hello to everybody. And secondly, the first thing she said was, what's going on? What's going on? Because that was the first time that I had allowed her to see me vulnerable. And that was my own things. I didn't want anybody to see me as weak or vulnerable or whatever I thought that was. But yeah, it is. It's a masking, definitely. And it's a community effort. And so, I always tell my girls that people need to know that you have your own team. People need to know that you have your own support system. People need to know that there are people out there who love you and care about you and are willing to do anything to make sure that you are okay. And sometimes we have to remind ourselves of that also. So.
I was just going to say that when I was going through my situation with my husband, it was really, I won't say weird, but come to find out that his mother was a victim of domestic violence. He grew up in a home. His mother and father were divorced, but the husband that his mother had married was an abuser. So he was abusing her, and he was abusing the children. So when I married my husband, he already brought this baggage of abuse into the marriage. I actually brought my baggage of abuse into the marriage. So then we had just this great big conglomeration of dysfunction going on. And my father-in-law, his dad, would see me sometimes, or he would hear, because for a while we stayed in New York with his dad, so we stayed in the basement area and his dad stayed upstairs, but he would hear things, or he would see things. He would see me, because as you can see, I'm very light-skinned, so it doesn't take much for me to bruise, to scar, or whatever. And I would hear him sometimes, and he would say it in front of me. He would tell him, he said, "You got to stop doing that. You got to stop doing it. You can't keep doing that to her." And then his thing was, "Oh, are the kids okay?" And of course I'd be like, "Yeah, the kids are fine." He never said to me, "Get out." He never encouraged me to leave. He never encouraged me to get help. He never encouraged me to because he knew I had a whole set of parents in North Carolina. He didn't ever say, "Go back home to your mom and dad." He never said that. He would just always tell him, "You got to stop. You got to stop." But I used to
Really,
wonder,
and what the feedback that I received from that was, if I would have told you straightforward, you wouldn't have done it, because you were so wrapped up. You were so wrapped up in this relationship. You were so wrapped up in this person. Oh, this person is this person is the world, this person is my love. And so maybe for some, and maybe not for others, I am an Aquarius, and I am a hard-headed Aquarius. And a lot of my journey has been, I have a vision, I'll figure it out. And so, yeah, you can tell me something and I may remember it and I may think upon it, but I don't always necessarily think it applies to me. Right? And so in our own stubbornness, for us going for what we think we want, what we think we should have. I have a cousin right now, young lady I raised since a baby, and I love her to death. And she is in a situation that we have not been able to pull her out from. And we have been very direct with her, because we've all gone through what we're discussing on this platform today. And she came to a family member's house one night. Something that she had injured her foot and she was in a cast. And we're all asking what's going on. She's saying that the dog tripped her. Okay. She's 23. She's beautiful. She's a chef. And I see it all over again. And if we could kidnap her and put her in a closet and get rid of this person, but it goes both ways, And as long as she feels needy for that person, no matter what we say, no matter how we say it, no matter what we have waiting for her, she has to make the decision that that's no longer where she wants to be. And that's difficult.
I can chime in right there, Deidre. It takes, you know, they have to make the decision. It's just like an addict who has to admit and acknowledge that he is or she is addicted to this drug or whatever the addiction is. And as much as we want it for them, my daughter's father was a secret addict or functioning addict, if you will. So where they have to come to that aha, this is my situation and I can change it. They're going to continue to believe that they can make a difference. They're going to continue to believe the lie that the abuser is telling them in secret. See, it's not always openly in front of everybody. It's what's being said behind closed doors. It's what's being done, maybe sexually. He's fulfilling, maybe he's providing, whatever he's doing to make her feel that she needs to stay with him or to support him. And until she comes to that place in her mind that enough is enough, that I can't fix your problem and that it's causing me harm, she'll continue to cycle it. And she'll continue to think that she can handle it, that she's strong enough to take it. And that another thing, this ride or die philosophy that I hear of the young people, you might ride or die and you're going to ride it out with me. If you with me, if you believe in me, you're going to ride or die with me. And a lot of times it's a psychological conditioning mentally that they take over them. And if you can remember back in your circumstances, even as a deacon in the church, you couldn't dare go to the church and tell the church members, sister, you better make that man happy. You know how to make that man happy. And it was always us as women having to certify in that man what he's doing is not okay. If you went against the grain, you was wrong because you exposed the family secret. You exposed that dirty secret. How dare you? That's your husband. You're supposed to cover your husband. You're supposed to, the blood of Jesus, you're supposed to be able to pray and anoint those demons off of your husband. And it's false teaching. It's false perceptions of our humanity. And when I think back with just touching in on in-laws make a big imprint, because with my situation, my daughter's father, his mother was this prayer. I mean, the mother was an alcoholic. The auntie took him at 4 years of age and raised him as her own son. So she had this impression in the whole family. See, this is just generational family curses. If she prayed and saw something in the vision, that was law. And when she made the decree that I didn't deserve to be with her nephew, who had asked me for his hand in marriage, that was it. The whole family follows suit. So sometimes you have those matriarchs in the homes, in the community. And that's what I was wanting to share earlier, how I had to battle with that philosophy that if I said anything wrong about him, when I came to his auntie and told her about the drug use, she threw it in my face. Oh, you should have recognized. If you knew what I knew, you should have recognized and took your tail and ran. Now you don't want to deal with it and blah, blah, blah. So a lot of times the family members are not the best support system. And many times they are instigators. I had one woman in my shelter who the family members, when she began to expose and call the police on their brother to be arrested, they jumped her and beat her themselves, the sisters and cousins in the family. So you run the risk when you begin to expose these outsiders in this relationship that they can either be for you or they can be against you. And that can break the relationship with the woman, and how she begins to now melt down. And so I use a tool a lot that helps, the wheel, if you will. And that wheel explains the cycle of abuse and the cycles. And when you see that, when I use that with my women in counseling, I say, I don't want to tell you what is going on in your relationship. If I show you something, can you share with me where you see your relationship on this wheel? So when they look at the wheel and they begin to see the cycle, oh, that's what he did. Oh, yeah. So it's a trigger. We have to trigger their minds and trick them back to believing that they have the power and the authority to make those decisions to leave. And that's what I do. Part of my advocacy is empowering them to say, you made the best choice. You want to keep your children safe. I agree, because I did the same thing. So to validate what they believe, how they see themselves, and what they think of themselves. So the conversation, Deidre, might be, how do you feel about what's happening? Do you believe that, getting her to see outside of herself?
I want to touch back on that for just a second. Thank you so much, Janet, and I'm going to keep you here, but Ms. Desiree has to leave in a minute, and so we want to give her an opportunity to express on the topic, and then we're going to get back into the meat of what we've been talking about. Just put a pin right there, Janet. We're coming back to you. Thank you, Desiree. Okay, sorry.
You're welcome. To piggyback on that, as far as with the families, like I said, I didn't come from a background of abuse, so my family was very supportive when I did decide to leave. And like I said on last Sunday when we did the interview, my parents didn't interject at all. They knew what was going on, but my mom kind of gave me that time to, figure out when I wanted to leave. She didn't want to interject, but with his parents, I'm going to say his mom and his stepdad, they knew what was going on. But it was never any, it was always the finger pointed at me that I'm doing something wrong for this abuse to be happening. Like, I'm not being a good wife. I'm not cleaning the home. I'm not taking care of the kids properly. I'm not cooking. And even after, years after I left, his life wasn't right. He was a mama's boy. She coddled him. People didn't even think he had a sister because the mom never did anything for the sister, even years after I left. And like Eulogia was saying, oh, you said you weren't going to keep the kids away from us. I literally, when I went to court for my divorce, I had to get my lawyer to send his mom a cease and desist letter to stop harassing me about bringing the children to see her. All his downfalls, he never drank, we never smoked. I was in the military. This man is now an alcoholic. He smokes cigarettes daily. And I want to say maybe 12, 13 years ago, the mom told me that the reason he's going through all of this is because I didn't work out the marriage. That I didn't stay. And I'm like, why would you want me to stay? Like, why would you want my children, even me, to be treated this way? And they thought like it was okay. His biological dad, this man from the beginning told me to run. He said, do not date my son. He says, I went through, and everything that he told me that he went through with the mom is to the T what I went through with the son. But you're young, you in love. And now it's I don't want to say it's crazy, but like me and my kids, they're older, they're young adults. We sit around and we talk, and my kids even see it. My oldest son is 23, my daughter's 21, and they say, Mom, what is wrong with my dad? Like, this man has problems. Like, the grandmother, the kids have distanced themselves from her. They don't even deal with her at all because she has issues, and the cycle will never end. The next girl he had kids with, the same thing happened. The same abuse. The mom blames her. And it's just a never ending cycle.
I would love to jump in. I'm not, never been married. But with my abuser, they didn't know. They had no clue that he had the potential of even being abusive. So when we really figured out where it came from him seeing his dad abuse his mom. And so, we talk about signs and things of that nature. We were in a relationship for a total of 3 years. It didn't flip until probably like year and a half, maybe a year and a half, close to 2 years in, that I started to see this dude for who he was. And I remember, saying to myself, like, how did you just became the Incredible Hulk on me out of nowhere? Like, where did this come from? And I remember, his family always talking highly of him, who he was, and just he was this kind of guy. And, so it was more of a secret than anything. Now, the person who caught on to the relationship being abusive was my mom. Because my dad abused my mom. And my mom never told me until I came home one day from college and I had a bruise on my thigh the size of a softball. And that's because he bit me. Literally, we were fighting and he bit me, and it was just, the bruise was that big. And so I'm minding my business. I hop out the shower, not knowing. Well, I knew my mom was in the bathroom, but I'm thinking she's on her way out, and she sees the bruise and she goes off. She's like, "Where did that come from?" And I made up something at the time. So that was kind of like the first sign of her, paying attention to what was going on. And then later on, we had an incident to where he called the house phone, and I didn't realize my mom picked up the phone, and he was apologizing and saying how sorry he was. And my mom snapped. She was like, "I knew there was a reason why I didn't like him. He reminds you of your daddy." And I'm like, "Whoa, hold on. 18, 19, first time you're hearing this ever, that your daddy was even abusive. It's like, you didn't think that you should have told me these things. You didn't think that, I might fall in the same places where you were." So my mom was very shameful of the fact that she allowed that my dad to do things to her. And then, when I finally did come out, I came out in a book, a co-authored book, and I called my chapter "The Sea of Black and Blue." And I wasn't expecting for my family to read it. My family wasn't supporting some of the things that I was doing. So I'm thinking, okay, they're gonna buy the book and that's it. Well, they're buying the book and comparing the notes and talking to one another like, "Did you see on page? Did you see this?" So they were really upset with me that I hid it from them. But real talk, I wasn't ready to be done with him. And I knew that. And if I would have shared that, he would have been 14 feet under, not 6, but 14. Okay. And I know that my family, they're very protective, but did he even share that with his family to this day that he was abusive? I wonder, because he hid it so well. But he would always constantly apologize to me. And even when I came out with the book, I told him, I said, "Hey, look, don't ask for no money, because that ain't what type of party it ain't that kind of party, dude. I just felt that I should let you know that I'm getting ready to share our story with other people, because I want people to get healed and set free from what we've been through." And this was maybe 10 years, at least 10 years have gone by, at least 10. And he goes, "I still haven't forgiven myself for what I did to you." I said, "Well, I'm gonna need you to figure it out, and you get that healing for yourself." So, he kept it on the low. Like, no one, they saw his anger issues, but never put together his anger issues with beating on a female. or the words that he's saying cutting so tough to where, hurting a woman, so because he was very abusive with his words. So my hair is short, and he was like, well, you're a bald-headed bee. If I don't want you, no one else will. And so when he would say things like that, I was young. I was 17, 18, 19. I thought it, I believed it, so I couldn't stand looking at myself in the mirror. So I started wearing wigs and weave. So the wigs and weave got me the attention that I wanted from him. And so, men wanted me. And I felt like, okay, this is amazing. But not realizing that there was something broken in me to even want that attention from a man like that, to be lusted after, and to be desired in a sexual, manner, and just wanting someone to say, you're beautiful. So I wore the wigs and the weave because I didn't want to see my bald head. I'm bald headed. If he don't want me, no one else will, right? Wrong. So my family didn't know until I wrote the book, which was 10, 11, 12, 13, something like that, years after it happened. And here recently, probably about a year ago now, I told my grandma that I tried to commit suicide over him. Literally, I took a Coach belt, hung it over in my shower curtain rod, put one part around my neck, stood on the edge of the tub, and tried to hang myself, and it wouldn't work. And I didn't understand why. I was mad. I didn't want to be here. And now I'm thankful that I am, to share these stories and to tell, I don't look like what I've been through, but I've been through it. And I'm happy to be able to help somebody else get to the place where they can be free in the fact that, yeah, it happened, and shift their mind to, yes, it happened, and I'm here to tell it. I'm here to share. I'm here to empower. I want to continue to focus on being set free, no matter what people say, family included. Because I got to the point, I don't care. Y'all don't pay my bills. Y'all don't do nothing for me in that capacity. So why should I continue to have your thoughts of how you feel about what I went through? I don't care anymore. And now I'm more vocal about I don't care. And they get it and they support it now. But having family support, when I came out with my story, they disowned me. They stopped talking to me for 6 months. They were pissed. And to be able to experience that level of hurt from blood, that's the worst pain ever.
Yeah, no, absolutely. As far as the friends thing, so unfortunately, I've dealt with several relationships with domestic abuse. And I just want to first off say that I am finally at a place where my relationship and my partner is also a healed person and is at a place in their lives where respect and character and honesty and loyalty matter the most. And so our relationship is very nurturing and loving. And I have not had that in a long time. And so that's something new for me, and I'm thankful for that. But I say that to say that in my course of relationships, what I have found for those who were the closest to us, one, my marriage, which again, I had known my husband all my life. And I had to cut people off because those people were more so advocates and helping him keep tabs and tally and things of that sort on me. And because I'm not a person who voices my personal business, I left in the middle of the day when my husband was at work, packed up my car, packed up my children. I had been working secretly for the last 8 months and saving and looking for a place. And so I left, I fled, and was really in hiding for 3 to 4 months with a restraining order, with all of those things. And I had to stop communication with almost everyone because of the toxicity. But because we were such private people, I don't even think that most of them realized what was going on. And so they were helping him out of, oh man, that's really difficult that you guys are having separation issues or whatever they thought. But in their helping, my house was ransacked. My windows, someone tried to break my windows every night for 3 weeks, throwing rocks at my windows. I was harassed. My ex-husband also went so far to gain access to what I was doing, to secretly start dating the babysitter's assistant, to gain access to records as to where I was working, what school I was going to, everything. And so at that point, now, what would he, was he a person that was violent to death? I don't know, I'll never know, but I felt like my life was in danger. And with the tactics that he was using, yes, I was more afraid every time. I lost jobs because my coworkers were scared because I was getting harassed at my job and the harassment wouldn't stop. He'd have people come by. It'd be over 1,000 calls a day at my call center. So yeah, I lost all of the close people that I had known for over 20 years, trying to make sure that we were safe. And then my other situation was wild because it was a dating situation. And we were actually living with roommates. And the only thing I could remember about that was each time there was an incident, our roommate's girlfriend would always be like, well, he's just going through some things with his kids right now, or that person really loves you, and it was always a consoling situation. It was never a, hey, you and your kids got to get out of here, or she was always the one, if she was home, to like help walk me into the bathroom and run a bath and make sure that I got pain medicine and different things like that. And so the toxicity of those relationships that grow out of the focus of the relationship that you're in, is a web, and so coming out of that, you do feel alone, because these are people who you've spent your most intimate times with, because you can't tell everybody. Who are you going to tell? And then as a parent, you don't want anything to happen to, if I have to go to court, I don't want people to look at me and think that my kids need to be taken away. I don't need to, worry about child welfare. I don't need to. So you're dealing with all of those things as a woman, and still trying to maintain the facade, and still trying to hold some sense of community. And I feel like that goes deeper. That's the mental aspect that we now get into, and the emotional aspect, and how we create community for those that are healing and that are going through transition.
Sometimes our family members and extended friends, their intentions mean well. They try to be neutral and say, I'm not going to take a side. I'm not going to choose sides on your side or his side because I'm not in the relationship. I don't know the story. And so when you come to someone who's close to kin, who knows him and has been around him, like her situation and mine's, you know, they're members of the church, but the pastor of the church, he was over the youth ministry, so of the young adults rather, because he was like in his 30s. And, you know, I'm this teenager who's, you know, you go pointing the finger, you're being a sassy little girl, and, you know, you should have been in college, and all of these things, they point the finger. So you don't trust that you can be transparent with your friends and the outsiders as you would like to. You're trying to be the big person and say, hey, I got myself, this is what my dad used to say, you know, you got to be a woman to lay, if you make your bed, you got to lay in it. You got to be that woman. You need to be, you know, able to handle whatever it is you got yourself into. And so therefore, when you felt that isolation, you're like, okay. And then they would help. Like, you know, when I was shot at, my mom didn't have any idea that this man had a gun in the car and wanted to kill me. She just thought that, you know, hey, she's going on with her life. You know, don't be bothered with her. Leave her alone. She's at the fair with the kids and she's trying to start her life over. And that was the information that he needed to know where I was. He knew the county fair and where it was at. And he knew the car that I drove. He paid a guy $1,000 to follow me and to document everywhere I went, to keep tabs on me and track me, because in his eyes, if he didn't have me, nobody else would. And this is what he would say. So sometimes the family members are enablers, unfortunately. They are. And sometimes knowingly, and other times just innocent. They just want to see, they saw the love, they seen you guys going together happy. Oh, you know, something, you know, he's going through, or if he's on drugs, you know, you got to support him and help him get help. You know, I did every class. I've never done drugs, never was hooked on drugs, but I did those classes with my daughter's father because I wanted to be supportive. I wanted to show I loved him. I wanted to show that I had his back, and his auntie is looking at, well, if you really love him, you would help him. You see? So there's a guilt trip that's laid on you as well. And then, you know, I have the best friends. My girlfriends were like, girl, that man is crazy about you. He loves you. And this was another relationship later in life. And my best girlfriend wouldn't believe me. She loved him. And she loved our relationship because she had a chance to witness me being happy and in a good relationship on the outside. But when he would drink, oh my goodness, he would come home drunk and a whole nother person. I didn't know who he was. So I would tell her, and the time that I was in flight, it got so bad. When I was in flight, I ran to her house because her fiance was a fireman. So he was gone for 4 days and then she would be home by herself. And so when I came to her house and I told her how they had, you know, a high-speed chase and that these guys followed us and was trying to, you know, shoot at us and everything. And she was like, girl, what kind of stuff is that? You know, she just disbelieved me. And I said, Bernie, I need to be here with you for a few days. Please let me stay here because this man is crazy. He's following me. He's got people tracking me and everything. And he threatened me. When he showed me the gun, I knew then I was in trouble. There was no more making sense of what he called love, because it wasn't love. And many times they brainwash you and they massage you and they make the family members believe. See, she couldn't see because he never always pulled the chair out. Baby, let me open your bottle. Do you have a straw? That over possessive, protective, want to make sure you got everything in front of the people, in front of my friends and family members, girlfriends and people that were close to me. So the ones closest to you are oftentimes the ones who are most blind to the offense, to the abuse, because they see that good man, they see him open the door for me and, you know, compliment me in front of everybody. Oh, baby, that dress looks so good on you. You look gorgeous tonight. And, you know, but yet and still at home, I don't like you being with her. They'll beat you down about being associated, oh, she wears those cat suits. My girlfriend was real tiny and had she loved those little one suiters, that they used to have the boots on with the and they called them cat suits back in the 80s. And she would dress all up, and she had all this bling bling because she designed jewelry. So she just like had all kind of stuff dazzling. And he thought that was, oh, she's out there to catch men. And why you with her? She, men are going to be looking at you. And so you shouldn't be going out with her. And then they begin to judge you on who you should be with, who you shouldn't be with. Don't go to church because the pastor's going to make a pass at you, because remember how the other pastor did you. And so if they knew your story or knew a little of your history, they would use it against you as well. So now you felt really trapped. And so now to appease him, you say, okay, well, I'll stop going to church so he doesn't get upset, and I found myself trying to compensate to make everybody else happy. And I was miserable. I was dying inside. I was really broken to a place like Tocarra. I didn't want to live anymore. I didn't want to be here. And I had a conversation with God one day, is where I began to build my relationship with the Father one-on-one. And many of us have to come to that meeting of the mind. And eventually this will take you there. And so when I began to cry out to God, I had left California. I was in North Carolina now, trying to start my life over. And this person was still pursuing me. And I cried out to God, either take me now or somebody's going down, because I can't live like this anymore. And that's where I came to my breaking point. I broke. And the family church members that I was with, they believed me. They didn't side with him. He had all the people in the company that we worked together. They were able to give him all the information on me. And the secretary, people in the job knew. They knew firsthand what was happening. And they stood on the back like, oh, we don't want to get involved. We don't want him coming after us. We don't want him threatening us because he's got a gun, And so now they know he has the gun because I went and told the president and the people that were his upper leaders in the company. So when you're ready, and I'm sharing this with anyone who may hear this platform, when you're ready and you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, and when you come to that place, that aha moment between you and God, you know without a doubt within your soul that it's not the best relationship for you. The Holy Spirit speaks to you and allows you to get a clue. It's just a matter of you trusting that and making that decision to say, you know what, I can't, and I'm out. And trust it with all your heart, because God at that point will protect you and cover you. And I know that firsthand. I'm speaking from someone who was covered and was protected, because you would think a gun, a knife, those things are real tools to hurt and harm people. And we know it does damage. So that's a fear factor that they put in you. They put that fear in you. So I just wanted to share that perspective, that when you're going through and you have family members and outsiders that's surrounding you, it's so important that you trust your inner thought, your inner feelings, even when others don't believe or others support him. In your heart, God lets you know it's time.
Absolutely. Holistic coach. What I have learned through my training, I also grew up with certain gifts passed down generationally, being able to see things that are not of the natural eye, being able to break down dreams and visions and things like that. What I have noticed is it takes a collective process. Again, I grew up, my foundation is in the Baptist church. And so that is where I started my rearing. And so things like that were taboo. even my grandmother and my aunts and things all have these gifts, and yet they pushed and pressed them down due to religion and what they were told in the church as to those gifts not being a positive thing. And so when I left the church, I begin my journey to enlightenment on a different path, meaning that I started really venturing out in nature more. I started working on my grounding and being one with the universe, meaning meditation techniques, being able to sit in my stillness, being able to mentally look at my thoughts. And all I can say is, with all of those gifts that are happening, with me dreaming, with the visions happening, with me hearing the wind speak to me and hearing my ancestors talk to me, the one thing that I can say is, during meditation, when I am in total silence and in totally centered within myself, I find clarity and the dots begin to connect themselves. And for me, I call it universal divinity, because the universe opens up and it constructs things together. So God gives you insight, right? God speaks to your mind, he speaks to your heart, he speaks to your senses. And so you feel things, you may see things and not really understand where they're coming from, but incorporating that with other parts of spirituality allows a clear vision. And so I encourage everyone on the panel and those who may be listening to us, that meditation is for everyone. Meditation can be 5 minutes in the bathroom. It can be 2 minutes prior to lifting your head off the pillow. It can be shower time. It is time that you allow yourself to be totally present with yourself. And in that moment, those bouts of clarity happen. It's happened with my business. It's happened with my personal life. It's happened in the communities that I involve myself in. And it's being able to learn discernment and really listen to the tools that the universe is giving you. Because we move so fast through our daily dealings that we don't stop and hear the sounds. We don't stop and hear the whispers. We don't stop and notice the signs. But when you do, everything that happens throughout the day is purposeful. Why you leave 5 minutes later than normal on a Tuesday. Why you make a right turn, why you miss an exit. I have things that happen every day that are nothing but bouts of miracle, that I made it back in my door. I can jump online and find something that happened in an area that I was in, and maybe 15 minutes after I left, or maybe I got out the door late that day. I remember leaving and I was so pressed about being late. And then something said, "You're always in time." And I kid you not, I ended up having to take another route. It was a huge crash on the freeway that day. Had I been on that road at that time, who knows? And so being able to listen and communicate with the universe, and just be present enough to get those signs and to be able to decipher them. And they come in many forms. But meditation and holistic care has been the major part of my life that has allowed me to see a clear path.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I think that's an area that we can probably tap into on another, on another time and try to go deeper,
Right.
Yeah.
I find that in my guiding and travels in my time of meditation and prayer, I found it to be, I'm just coming into an awareness of where my sister was just speaking, because I, being raised in the church and I just was always taught, even in ministry and as I've been an adult and being an armor bearer with some of the, big leaders and preachers and ministers and stuff, it's still passed down in the church that those things are taboo. So God has been, since the pandemic has been shutting down the church system, God has begun to speak to me in my hours and wake me at 3 a.m. and 4 a.m. And begin to speak to me. And so I use, as for me, as a reference point, my Holy Spirit and my angels that have guarded me and guided me from all of these travesties that I've overcome. I've survived. And that's the reason why we're here collectively together, sharing our stories of survival, because these things were designed to really debilitate us, to make us crazy, to make us think that, what we're experiencing isn't real. But thank God we heard the clarion voice, that we got the clarity. Whichever medium in which God used to touch us, we were able to become present in where we are right now. We were able to overcome and survive. When you have a knife in your side, or you've been shot at, point blank in the face, and not one bullet hits you, that's a miracle. It's been, I can't put it all in a book, this particular book, but everything that God allowed me to survive through, I had to recognize. When I tell you I had that experience in North Carolina, it was as if the heavens opened up, literally. There was a battle, and the heavens just like opened up. And I share this with my God sister at the time, that led me to this place where God used that opportunity to really speak to me oracally, as they call it, the Rhema voice of God. And I heard the Rhema voice of God, and I told him, I need to understand, is this my purpose in life? See, this is where we're leading. This is where God wants us to come to a full circle. That who are you? What has he placed you on this earth to do? What is your assignment? Hallelujah. And so when God began to show me that your assignment is to go out and speak and help other women and teach them the same way that I carried you, the way that I showed you the pathway to safety and to healing. Grab other women and bring them out of the pits of hell of domestic violence. Make, segues to provide safety for these women, as you were brought all the way from California to North Carolina. And this man still found me. So God had to put a block and stop him from being able to continue to traumatize and terrorize and stalk, if you will, because this is what we've all experienced in different forms. But each of us can share. And if you listen, we've been stalked. Our jobs, we lost everything. And you're looking at a woman who lost home, cars, money, job. I had all of it. And God said, those things are material things. He can replace those things. But your soul is where you have to decide. Are you going to lend your life to this devil, or are you going to take up and say, I know that as greatness in me, God has greater for me, and that I will not submit to these evils that come against me, because that's what it is. And when you took that stand, when you made that declaration, when you recognized this was not of God, that this was not healthy, that it didn't feel good, you made a decision and you said enough is enough, and we walked away in our different locations of this universe, as my sister eloquently said. And now he has channeled us into this one room here for us to share and help others who may be in the same situation, who may be going through the same thing. A lot of times our eyes, we have blinders on. We're blinded by the myth that this is love. And they teach us, they brainwash our minds. I call it brainwash. Others may have a different label for it, but I see it as brainwashing. They wash our minds to believe that they are the best thing for us, that they believe in us, that they want us, that they love us. So, like I said, my ex, he was excellent at the manners. Hold the door, pull the chair out, go around the car and open the door for you, grab you by the hand and help you. I mean, those are manners that most women a lot love. We, give you $500 here, go and buy yourself, take care of yourself, nails manicured, feet manicured, get your hair done. When we get that type of attention, we get skewed. And then in the evening, in the nighttime, in the midnight hours, you have this person raised up out of the bed. And so oftentimes when I was going through my domestic violence situation, I felt like I was sleeping with the enemy, and so when, Julia Roberts did that movie, Sleeping with the Enemy, it was like all in my face, like I could see me in that situation. So, when we come to a spiritual awakening, when we come to a place of gathering our soul and our mind and body to become one in alignment, as the sister was sharing just a minute ago, you then begin to listen to that instinct, to that still voice. You begin to see when your life is in jeopardy and you don't know if you're going to be alive tomorrow to wake up to tell it. You have to get out. You have to make a decision. And that's when the universe begins to tell you, danger, danger. Listen to yourself, trust it, danger. No matter what any man says outside of that, danger, danger. And when you trust it, you're saved. Many of our sisters didn't trust it. Many of our sisters didn't leave. They didn't take the signs and the signals, and they're no longer with us. So I just want to bear witness to the truth that if we trust the instincts and, like she said, do that time of meditation and trust God, awakening, he will save many more. And as we begin to share our stories and we can continue to bring these conversations around the table, a lot of more women are going to hear our stories and see themselves in our story. And that's what drove me and led me to become a part of this. It was time for me to share my story. It was time for me to come out of hiding, if you will, and to allow the women and those outside of those who I initially work with, in my counseling and therapy. Even then, I don't disclose, because unless it's purposeful, I don't disclose. But it was time for me to come out, and this is what I believe God said, from on a different level, not from the clinical standpoint, not from the teacher standpoint, or from the employment, with my job and my responsibilities there, but as an individual woman, as a mother, as a survivor. And that's the way I share my story, because now they can bear witness that I sat in the seat that they sat in. I was there. I understand. I can feel their hurt. I can empathize with their toiling back and forth. Should I or shouldn't I? I was there. And I thank you for even giving us this opportunity to come. I'm really grateful to be able to be among sisters that really embraced, my story, embraced me, and without judgment, because a lot of shaming, guilt, judgment comes with all of this fear of the unknown. And now I feel comfortable, and I feel my healing has taken place in a way that I can have my voice heard.
Thank you so
much. Yeah. No, and thank you for sharing your story. I really wasn't aware of your past. And so thank you for opening that up for us too. I think that it's important that from on all levels that the community at large is able to see that, because it could happen to anybody. You know, it could happen from a person from any household, from any financial background, any gender, and especially with the country being shut down, with the stress that's building up for individuals in regards to their work and how their finances are going to go in the next year to 5 years, how they're going to get their kids through school, or individuals who've been with companies 20, 30 years and now they're finding themselves on the short end of the stick. All those things bring depression and realms into the home that can be a sound off for domestic violence, for mental abuse, for emotional abuse. And so to have a platform, to have people who are willing to step up and speak out and be advocates to allow others to know that, hey, you know, there's somebody here, you're not alone. There's places for you to go. You know, it's a need, and more now than ever. So absolutely, we've got a lot of work to do.
It's housing. And that's what God put in my spirit 2 years ago when he moved me here to the New Jersey area in 2018. Well, I came before then, but it was in 2018 that he pressed on me, because at that point I was like, okay, I'm free from these relationships. I just want to be with the Creator and just take care of my children and make sure that their needs are met and get back on track. Because our last relationship, I lost everything. And I said, this is the last rodeo for me. And I didn't want to have anything to do with it, to believe it or not. I was just like, I just want my life. I don't want to do anything to domestic violence. I'm tired of it. Like, I don't even want to hear about domestic violence. And God is so funny, because I was in prayer with the church group that I was affiliated with, and we did a 3-day fast. And in 2018, and I'm thinking I'm over it all, right? I'm up here, I've got a new start, a new beginning. I'm going to do it all my way, right? Wrong. God spoke to me so clearly that evening. He said, did I tell you that this is not your path? I mean, that's exactly what I heard. Like, who's giving you directions? Because I gave you a mandate. Fulfill it. So I'm listening, and I'm like, what? Like, really? Then the Holy Spirit gave me the scripture, 2 Corinthians, the 8th chapter, the 10th verse. If you had the heart and the willingness to do it, complete it. And I was done. I was finished. When he took me to the scripture to support, I've called you to this work. I'm the one who delegated for you to be in this space and time and to help these women. And so I had to pick up my bed and walk in, working on getting a transitional home together for these who will come. And I said, God, you're going to have to guide me. You're going to have to bring the people, because I'm in a new territory. Like, I'm up here. I know no one. And he began to start sending different ones. And he said, well, just start doing the workshops. And just, he began to give me visions of workshops, and people were, supporting the workshops, and I was doing programs. And then I began to start meeting other therapists and other counselors and finding out the organizations. He's like, you know what to do your research. And so therefore I got back on the wheel to complete the work that he started in me. So I thank God that, I'm hearing and I'm listening, and I'm grateful to meet you all ladies to push me, because it's not easy. And, housing, that was my biggest challenge at work. I could not find placement for the women to go. I could not, the shelters are full, especially during this pandemic. People are afraid of being exposed to COVID. So women were being pushed away. Ladies, women were being pushed away from on the ground. Talking with the prosecutor's office and different areas that support and are in the community of domestic violence, they were being pushed away. The shelters wasn't opening the doors. And so they're stuck in home, they're stuck in these relationships. And, people are saying, don't come and visit, don't come. And this is what we're faced with right now. It's on a rise. And if we do nothing but rally together and support transitional housing, not just because I'm in the process of opening a safe house, but because the mandate, the need is so important right now, that we have space for these women to go, that they can leave safely, and then we come and support them. And that's what God showed me. He gave me an open vision. I was driving down the highway and I literally seen it with my open eyes. I wasn't asleep, because normally I get dreams, but I was wide awake driving down the highway. And it was like the Lord just took over the car, and I see this apartment building with women, and people were coming and helping them and giving them supplies. And I was like, what? And so sometimes, as you were sharing, Deidre, that you get those visions and those insights, it's and Tocarra shared a lot about how God speaks to her and wakes her at 3 a.m. and all. We have to write the vision and make it plain, that those who may read it can run it. That's what the word says, that we can support, that we can rally around and provide the services that's needed. We receive